Hi, I'm Lad Dunfield, and I'm the pastor of the St. Andrews Baptist Church here in St. Andrews. Our talk today is going to be taken from the book of Philippians, and it's chapter 4, verses 11 through 13. I'm going to read the verses and then say a few things about them. I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstance. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it's like to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, and I can do all this through Him who gives me strength. When you think about being content, you think about having everything go your way. You think about, well, I've gotten the raise at work, or my kids have gotten married to the people that I was hoping they would marry, or I've been able to get a promotion or something along that line. But that's not what Paul's saying here. He's not saying that he's just content when things go his way. He's saying I'm also content when things don't go my way. And that's very difficult for most of us because we're used to grumbling and not being so happy. It's not easy when you see your retirement being drained, or you see having to stay in the house all of the time because of the coronavirus. But Paul says, I am content whatever the circumstance. You have to think about that for a while. In other words, he's saying, I'm content when things go well in my life, but I'm also content when things don't go so well in my life. And that's the secret. In fact, he even calls it a secret. It's the secret of being content, he says, in any situation, whether I'm doing well or I'm not doing well. I'd like to tell you a little about the background to the book of Philippians so you can see that Paul knows what he's talking about. A number of people started spreading rumors about Paul, and it soon got to the attention of the Roman authorities, and Paul found himself arrested. They took him, put him in prison, and the proconsul of the day, a man by the name of Felix, calls him up, talks to him, and says, Paul, I'll let you go if you give me a bribe. Paul says, well, I'm not doing that. So Paul wastes the next 2 years in prison. Felix finally gets moved, and along comes a guy by the name of Festus. Festus says to him, I don't want anything to do with you. Paul says, I don't want anything to do with you. How about if you send me to the Roman Emperor Nero in Rome, because I'm a Roman citizen and I have the right to ask that, and he'll judge me. Festus said, that's fine with me. Puts him on a boat, sends him off to Rome. On the way to Rome, what happens? There's a storm, and Paul is shipwrecked. He spends the entire winter on one of the Mediterranean islands waiting for the weather to get better, makes his way to Rome. Nero's not interested in hearing him. He spends another 2 years in prison. 5 years he's been in prison because some people spread some rumors around about him. Now, Paul is writing to the Philippians from prison. It's called one of the prison epistles. And he's saying, I am content in every circumstance. That means that Paul is content, even though he's in prison. And in chapter 1 of Philippians, it says he's even chained to 2 guards, one on each side of him. You imagine, 5 years chained to guards. And he says, I'm content in every situation. Well, some of us are going through some situations right now where we could use some contentment. Things aren't exactly as we thought they might be 2 weeks ago. We've been confined to our houses. We're being told that we may have to wear masks when we go outdoors. We wear gloves when we go to buy groceries. We're worried about our job. We're worried about our retirement. We're worried about whether or not we'll ever get back from furlough. There's a lot of things to make us discontent. And yet Paul says, I have learned to be content regardless of the circumstance. That's an amazing thing to be able to say. Some of you, like Paul, feel that you've been in a cell for a long time. Some of you have other things, though, that have taken away your contentment. You might have some unfinished business in life, dreams that never got completed. You might have problems within your personal life that are stealing away your contentment. You might have situations that are beyond your control, resentments that still linger. There's a lot of things to steal our contentment in life. But Paul says, you can be content in any of these circumstances. They don't have to get the better of us. The coronavirus, we know it's going to come, it's going to go. Some of these other issues are a little deeper, and they take a lot of energy and a lot of time to deal with them. But Paul has told us that he is content in these situations. And the reason he's content in the situation, he says, is because I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Or I can do all this through God or through Christ who gives me strength. There are a lot of things that you and I can't do on our own. There's a lot of things that don't work out well for us. But the strength to get through this situation, to deal with the coronavirus, the strength that we have comes from without. It's not from within. It comes as a gift from God to strengthen us and encourage us, and to give us the power to be able to face these situations and not be discouraged about them and not give in. It's to put your trust in God, that he loves you, cares about you, and wants to see all things work well for you. We too can say as Paul, I am content whatever the circumstance, because we too can have Christ dwell within us through the power of his Holy Spirit in our life. I'd like to end by just telling you a quick little story that Charles Price, former pastor of the People's Church in Toronto, once told, and I thought it's kind of appropriate for us. He was babysitting his two daughters once when they were really young. And he said that he was in the front room reading when all of a sudden he heard this tremendous scream coming from one of his daughter's bedrooms. So he ran in and she was wide awake, sitting up in bed, and he sat down next to her and he said, "What's wrong? What's the problem?" And she said, there's someone in my closet." And he said, No, dear, there's nothing in your closet. You just had a bad dream." And she says, "No, there's something in my closet. I could hear him." And he goes, "No, see, we're not hearing anything. There's nothing in your closet. You don't have to be afraid." And he put her in his arms and he held her for a while. And all of a sudden, he heard a noise in the closet. And he said to his daughter, "There's something in your closet." So she laid back down again, and he said her eyes were big as saucers. And he went over to the closet and he threw open the door, and out jumped the cat. And the cat went running out through the house and out. And he went back to his daughter and he said, "It's okay, dear. It was just the cat. That's all that was in the closet. You can go back to sleep now. Everything will be all right." And she said, "Dad, don't leave me." And she just went into his arms and stayed in his arms. And he just held her there. And she said, "I'm afraid. I don't want you to let me go." Jesus says in John chapter 10, he says, "I hold you in my hand, and no one can snatch you out of my hand." Nothing can take us away from the love of God. And just as the pastor said that he held his daughter and that she finally fell asleep in his arms and he was able to put her back down to sleep because she was content knowing that he was her strength. And so it is that Paul was able to face everything that he faced because he knew that God was his strength, that God held him through all the storms of his life, that God took a hold of him and held him and never let go of him. So I hope that you continue to trust in God through this. I'd like to say in finishing that this is but a part of a sermon I'll be preaching 11 o'clock at St. Andrew's Baptist Church, all one word, on Facebook. And so I hope you will listen to all of the talk as I go a little further into some of the situations that Paul found himself in his contentment, where he went through tremendous problems in life and how he was able to still continue to have that contentment. Thank you for listening, and see you next time. Bye now.